Welcome to the final installment of this 357 best GRE words to know. The list, as ever, was compiled by Prep Scholar, and what they did is they went through all the official practice materials and others from Manhattan and Kaplan, found the words that came up the most frequently, and compiled this list. Now, if you haven't seen my other videos, I've got a playlist of vocab videos for you to watch, and 6 of them, I think it is now, contain the other letters from this list, but this will be the final video in the series. So at a minimum, if you're doing the GRE soon, watch these videos to learn these 357 words. Final bit of intro is that I will give my own interpretation of the word without looking at the definition on the right. I should know the word, but I might not always know the word, and then we'll look at the right and see what they say. Without further ado, let's get to the first word, which is tacit. And I think of that word as meaning implicit, not spoken out loud, but it's implicit. It's understood between the two parties, but no one says it out loud. You'll often see it in the phrase, they had a tacit understanding, a mutual understanding that they don't speak out loud. What do they say? Unspoken, implicit. Very similar to what I said. I didn't look at that though. Taciturn. I guess linked in a way to tacit in the sense that you're not speaking. Taciturn means quiet, reserved, not saying very much. You could almost say shy. It just means quiet, not saying very much. Let's see what they say. Reticent, similar, reserved, tending towards silence. Notice how tacit means unspoken and taciturn means not speaking very much, tending towards silence. An etymological link there. Okay, temperance, interesting. Temperance is showing restraint, balance, moderation, a lack of exuberance, refraining from indulgences, usually alcohol, things like that. It's a bit confusing because it kind of sounds a bit like temper, which is being angry, but no, it's not that. It's the opposite in a way. It's showing restraint, reluctance to indulge in sinful activities, you could say. What do they say? Moderation and restraint, my exact words, I'm on form here, sometimes used to specifically describe abstinence from alcohol. Yeah, there was the temperance movement, which was a movement, I think in America and around the world, to ban alcohol. It worked in the 1920s, but then they stopped and now alcohol is available, of course. The temperance movement, they wanted to encourage restraint, moderation. But temperance, of course, can be used not just when you're talking about that movement, but in general, restraint, moderation. Tenuous, great word. It means linked only by a thin thread. The friendship between the two was now very tenuous, only holding on by a thin thread. It's metaphorical, of course. You're trying to make a link between me and the crime, but the connection is extremely tenuous. I'm barely connected at all, only by a thin thread. So they say weak, flimsy, insubstantial. I think it's more specifically thin. But I guess it would make sense to describe tenuous as being weak, flimsy, insubstantial, not made of something strong and substantial, insubstantial. Thing is, what I don't like about that definition is if you thought tenuous just meant weak, flimsy, you'd say, oh, that building's very tenuous. But you would never actually say that because under my definition, which is better, I think, you couldn't say that the building was hanging on by a thread. No. So I'm going to quickly check dictionary.com and they can arbitrate whose definition is better. So I'm going to show you the result here, just to prove that I'm not making it up. Look at that. First definition, thin or slender, just like a thread. And I hadn't looked that up before, that was just my own understanding. And I guess secondary definition is closer to their one, lacking a sound basis, but it's still talking about as reasoning. You're talking about an argument being tenuous, not like a building being weak and flimsy. And again, the third one, thin, like a thread. So I think I'll claim the victory there, but either way, as long as you remember the definition, that's the main thing. Okay, timorous. Oh, I sometimes forget that one. Timorous, I think it means lacking confidence, timid, basically. It sounds a bit like timid. That helps me out. Timorous, yeah, I'd say kind of like the word diffident, maybe. I'd have to check it, but my main guess is lacking confidence, hesitant. What do they say? Meek or timid. There you go. So that link with the word timid helps us to guess the definition. And that's why etymology And seeing those prefix suffix links really helps you guess the meaning of a word if you don't know it already. So lacking confidence, that's what kind of meek means, shy, timid. Tirade, great word, kind of sounds a bit like at the end a rant, a raid, because it is a rant. A tirade is like a long rant that you say against someone. It's a verbal diatribe, a verbal assault on someone, a tirade. I guess you're raiding them verbally, attacking them, castigating them. An angry rant, there you go, exactly. Torpor, it's like sluggishness. You're in a state of torpor, you just got no energy to do anything. Ennui would be a fancy word to use here as a synonym. E-N-N-U-I, great French word, I believe. Anyway, torpor is usually using the phrase like in a state of torpor, meaning like you're sluggish, you haven't got any energy, you're not willing to do anything, kind of a bit lazy. What do they say? Tiredness, yes. Lethargy. The heavy drinking I indulged in last night left me in a state of torpor in the morning. Tired, lethargic, no energy. Tortuous. Interesting. Tortuous kind of is linked to tenuous in the sense of it's a very difficult connection to make. For example, if a route over a mountain is tortuous, it's not that it involves torturing you, it's more like there's so many paths, like a labyrinth, so hard to see the direction. Convoluted, intricate, complex. Not simple, not straightforward, tortuous. Not nearly as bad as being tortured, no, even though it sounds like the word torture, but it's more like complex, twisting and turning, not straightforward, basically. An antonym, an opposite word for straightforward. So you can use it for argumentation, right? You could say, your argument is truly tortuous. That's like an insult. You're saying it's not a straightforward, easy to follow argument. It involves so many twists and turns, very hard to follow, very confusing. That's a tortuous argument. What do they say? Winding or twisty, exactly, complicated. Okay, yeah, that's close enough to what I was saying. Complex, complicated, tortuous. Just remember, not as extreme as torture, but negative anyway. Tractable, great word, meaning, what does it mean again? Malleable, I would say. Easily influenced, easily persuaded, moldable, shapeable, tractable. Have you heard the phrase to get traction on something? Like to get a grip on something and be able to move it. If you're trying to push a car, you have to get traction somehow. You have to kind of grip the sides and then somehow get it to move. So if something is tractable, it's movable, it's shapeable. You can get a grip on it and influence it. I believe a word earlier on in this list was intractable. That means stubborn, obstinate, unchangeable. But tractable means changeable. What do they say? Can be easily influenced or managed. So they're kind of implying it's mainly about people, and that's true. You could say that a person is tractable, but I believe you could also talk about objects being tractable, although more commonly you're talking about a person who is easily influenced, easily persuaded. Transient, temporary, not lasting a long time. Again, I believe an earlier word was ephemeral, lasting only for a short duration. Transient is something similar. It transpires quickly and then is over. It's not enduring, it's not long lasting, it's transient. What do they say? It passes quickly, short-lived, exactly. Ubiquitous, fantastic word, meaning prevalent everywhere, universal, permeating, pervading everything. Those requests on websites to allow cookies are ubiquitous. You see them everywhere. Adverts on TV are ubiquitous. They just turn up all the time. I guess not really with Netflix anymore, but you get the point. I wonder if one way to remember that is, if you look at the first three letters, UBI, have you heard of that? Universal Basic Income. It's where everyone is going to get a check for like $1,000 or something. And that's universal, right? So ubiquitous is also universal. Everywhere, appearing everywhere. Pervasive. Ever-present, universal, exactly. Unadorned, I think that's a relatively simple one that most people will know. To adorn something is to decorate it, ornament it. To be unadorned is undecorated, not luxurious, not covered in ornaments, just simple, straightforward. The walls in her bedroom were unadorned. They were just plain, nothing on them. Or if you want to get really fancy, his CV was unadorned with many accomplishments. wasn't decorated with many accomplishments. What do they say? Plain, unembellished. It's a great other word actually. Embellished is again to be decorated or even exaggerated. Unembellished, simple, unluxurious, not luxurious. Undermine is a nice word. It means to get underneath something and remove its strength. Quite a hard one to describe actually. For example, if you're feeling like your authority is undermined, it's like weakened somehow, taking it away, sapping away its strength. I guess you could think of like in a medieval war where a castle is standing on a hill and the enemy comes in, digs underneath it and puts a mine there so it collapses. And that's being undermined. The castle feels undermined, not strong anymore, not on a firm footing, but undermined. A very common word. To feel undermined is not like a direct assault. It's not like someone's coming up to you and like slapping you in the face. No, it's more subtle. Just chipping away at your authority, at your standing. Be interested to see what they say. To weaken or compromise. Yeah, agreed. To underscore. This is actually the opposite. You're strengthening something. To score is a good thing. So if you're adding a score underneath something, you're helping it out. You're underlining it. You're really reinforcing it. It's the opposite of undermine. Obviously in typing, the underscore is that line that goes beneath the characters. But in life, to underscore something is to emphasize it, underline it, reinforce it. They say to line underneath for emphasis, to emphasize. Yeah. You can also use it metaphorically. For example, winning that new client really underscored his value to the firm. Underlined it, emphasized it. Let's keep going. Untenable. If something is tenable, it's plausible, it could happen. You could see it happening. So if something's untenable, it's not going to happen. It's not going to last, it's not going to endure. You often hear the phrase, this situation is truly untenable. It can't last, it's not realistic. We've got to change something. Or a lawyer might say your position is untenable. Faced with the evidence, you just can't simply keep saying your argument. You've got to admit that you're wrong. They say weak or unsupportable, especially with respect to an opinion or a situation. Yeah. To vacillate. I believe that means to switch back and forth between two different opinions, to vacillate between different options. Might have to check that one there. There you go. To shift between multiple opinions or options. Okay, I wasn't 100% sure on that. What's the other word linked to vacillate? Vacillation, I guess, is similar. Anyway, that's what it means. Venality. Ooh, I'm only about 90% sure. I believe to be venal is to be corrupt. And so venality is corruption, bribery essentially, giving in to temptation and breaching your oaths. But I'm only about 90% sure. I don't actually use that word much myself, but I believe venality and being venal means you're corruptible. You're influenced by money. The state of being capable of being bribed. Yeah. So you might not even have taken the bribe, but if you express venality, you are capable of being bribed. You could be bribed if someone were to offer. Cool. So venerate is to adore and respect, usually towards an older person. She venerated her mother for her lifelong list of accomplishments, making that person venerable, capable of being venerated. But yes, to venerate is to respect deeply and profoundly, usually towards someone older. But let's see what they say. To give a high degree of respect may border on worship. Yeah, it's almost hinting that you're taking it a bit too far, maybe. Maybe you should calm down a little bit. Either way, it's to give a lot of respect to. Veracity is a nice and easy one. It means the truthfulness of something. Let's check if something is veracious, checking if it's true. Just like verily means truthfully, which was shortened, by the way, to very, which is where we get the word very from. Or veritas means truth. Either way, all linked to the same root, veracity, truthfulness. As they say, truth and factual accuracy. To be verbose, you could accuse me in this video of being verbose, talking a lot, saying a lot. I guess one way of remembering that is you've got the word verb at the beginning, which is like a type of word. If someone is verbose, they're using many verbs, many words in general, just speaking so much. displaying verbosity. What do they say? Long-winded, loquacious. Almost a little bit of an insult, saying you basically talk too much. You're not really going to describe someone as verbose if you're praising them. But it's not a heavy insult, just maybe a light, condescending remark. Vexation. Something that causes anger, causes you to get vexed. If something is vexatious, it causes you to be frustrated, irritated, angered. I don't actually use the noun that much though, vexation. But I presume it means the thing causing you to be vexed. Let's just check. No. So a vexation is the state of being frustrated. I guess you'd use the phrase something like, I'm in a state of vexation at the moment. Or her actions cause great vexation. The state of being frustrated, irritated, or concerned. So it's not the thing that causes it, that's not the vexation. Vexation is the emotion, the state of being angered, frustrated. Slight clarification there that I didn't know. Volatile, fantastic word. Unpredictable, sometimes with a slightly violent element. Doesn't have to be, like the price of oil is very volatile at the moment, keeps going up and down. But if you describe someone's mood as volatile, that's a little bit more sinister. That means that person's not just unpredictable, but they're capable almost of quite extreme actions. You see it's got quite a few similar letters to the word violent. I guess volatile isn't quite as extreme or guaranteed as being violent, but it does mean unpredictable in a slightly sinister way if you're talking about a person. They say easily changeable or extreme, unstable. Right, the final two words in this list. If, by the way, you've enjoyed this list and learned any new words, please do leave a like and a comment. That will encourage me to do many more vocab videos, which I quite enjoy myself. As I say, I learn new words all the time. Even with this English Lit degree and GRE experience, I'm always learning new words and looking into the etymology of words, so I really enjoy doing it. Whimsical basically means acting on a whim, acting without much thought, just on an instinct or an immediate reaction. Not following a really thought out plan, just being whimsical. Living in the moment, following your dreams. You're a bit unpredictable. Maybe you follow your emotions too much. You're whimsical. I guess these days it's now a bit more derogatory, a bit more of an insult to say someone is whimsical, because you're basically implying they don't really have a plan, they're not too disciplined, they just follow their whims, follow their desires. They say fanciful, just following what they fancy, capricious, unpredictable. And finally, zeal. Great word. So there was this ancient tribe called the Zealots, and they were regarded as people who were extremely passionate and committed to their cause. I think they all ended up committing suicide on Masada Fort, which I've been to. But anyway, the point being, that's where the word zealot came from. Then you get the word zealous, someone who is passionate and committed. And finally, zeal, the noun zeal. If you've got zeal, you've got passion, commitment, dedication, energy. You're zealous, you've got zeal. They say passion, fervour, which I think was another word in this list. Either way, that brings us to the end of this list. I really hope you enjoyed. And do comment if you like this mix of English and maths that I produce on this channel. I'm always up for evolving the channel in any direction, but at the moment that's the style that I quite like and fancy. Either way, hope you learn a bunch of words and see you in the next video.